Welcome back to another episode of Mindset Mastery with Mindset Mary. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing someone who recently I met in Los Angeles at Devin Bendison's Game Changer Experience. Diana Tauder is a ICF credentialed and certified integral coach. She supports clients with personal and professional development, focusing on intentional and actionable changes as the keys to becoming a transformational leader. Diana specializes in partnering with leaders to deepen their capacity to show up authentically in their careers and in their lives. Diana coaches Fortune 500 managers, executives, film industry creatives, and people in life transitions. She supports them in clearing leadership blind spots and upgrading their abilities to lead with greater strength, inspiration, and care. Prior to her coaching career, Diana was a studio executive at Warner Brothers, where she worked for 2 decades. Diana, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mary. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for that great introduction.
No, it's my pleasure. So, Diana, take us to where it all began. I'm curious to know, how did your career in the film industry begin?
Well, I grew up in New York, so after college, I returned to New York, and I actually, in college, I was an intern at the Tribeca Film Center playing softball in the summer because the Miramax Films team was looking for more women. So I quickly raised my hand up and played third base for them. And in between junior and senior year of college, I wrote a letter to the people I played softball with and said, I'd love to be on your team again, but as an employee this time. So I started at the very beginning of where you can start. I was a receptionist at Miramax Films and soon moved into the post-production department. And they were famous for acquiring international films. So sometimes those films would be re-edited for the US release. And that was what I grew into doing. During my time there, I met all sorts of people, directors, actors, really creative executives, and wonderful people. I did work directly with Harvey Weinstein, and fortunately, I was not one of his victims, but it was definitely a challenge to be in his presence. And overall, my experience with all the other people there was fantastic, and I still have friends there. But at the end of my career at Miramax, I moved to Los Angeles and started doing freelance work, and eventually became an executive and ended my career when I was at Warner Brothers as a vice president of post-production there. I think being at that level, things started to slow down. I wasn't running from the mix stage to the editing room all over town. I was actually at my desk overseeing the people who were doing that running around. And it gave me time to sort of take stock of where I was after 20 years of being in the film industry. And I realized it was no longer fulfilling for me. And my heart was really in San Francisco. I left my heart in San Francisco. I'd worked up here a couple of times, freelance for Lucasfilm, and I just loved being up here. So I gave a date. I gave them lots of notice, moved up here, got a job in entertainment tech. And as I did that, I started to, again, I kept reassessing, where am I now? Where do I want to go? And I started taking classes in team dynamics and coaching. And eventually I took a certification through New Ventures West and became a certified integral coach. And let's see, 4 years later, here I am with my own business. And it was the best move I ever made.
Wow, that's amazing. So,
Yeah.
uh, so when you transitioned out of what you were doing, I guess my biggest question is, what were some of the signs where you knew, you know what? Well, this has been a great career. I'm heading
Mhm.
in a different direction. What were some signs that led you to believing that there was a new path waiting for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I I had mentioned all the running around I was doing, and it was really almost 20 years of that. Always like racing a schedule, being sort of owned by my schedule and not really taking charge of it. So once I was at an executive level and I was able to slow down, it gave me more time to think about what it was I really loved about my job. And I always love the movies, but what I really loved was my interaction with people and motivating a team. And
Mhm.
just naturally, people would come to me to talk about career changes or what's their next move or some interpersonal dynamic issues like not getting along with people at work, not being able to get the attention of their manager. And I was the person they came to, and I loved helping them. So it was always sort of it was popping up as the thing I loved most about my job, and I could still go to the movies and do something else. So when I took a job up here so that I could start my life up here, I was still noticing that trend of loving it's working with people. Of course, we all work with people, but it was sort of helping them get to where they wanted to go. And so the slowing down, the ability to slow down, like I at that point didn't have it in me to slow myself down, which I do now. But in that leadership role, I just had more time, more thinking time. And that's when all these ideas popped into my head.
I can absolutely relate to that, Diana, because I think for me, like when I decided, oh, I actually want to do coaching because, like you, I enjoyed helping people. People would come to me with some of their challenges and issues, not realizing that we have these natural abilities that we don't even recognize in ourselves because it's just part of who we are. And COVID did that to me, where it was like slowing down, and we stopped going to work, and now there's lots of time to reflect and think. So I think that that's great that you were able to have that opportunity in an executive level position. I think that that's amazing. So then you've moved into, getting an accreditation with the ICF, and you became an integral coach.
Mhm.
And for our listeners who may not be as familiar of what that is, can you explain a little bit about what is an integral coach?
Yeah, well, an integral coach is coaching the whole person.
Mm,
They're knowing that their feelings and their thoughts and their body, their heart, head, and body are all a part of them. And if we're fully aligned, both physically, mentally, and in our heart, uh, things will open up for us more easily. That's a big part of it. We
mm,
have our all these different aspects of our lives, relationships, work, family, our self-care, and it's all related. Um, so we can get clues. It's important to understand the life of a whole person to help them in whatever they want next, right? Like some people might not think it's relevant that somebody's getting 100 or more emails a day, plus getting slacked to death, plus getting things popping up on their phone or wearing an Apple Watch. Like these are actually asking detailed questions about like the technology in someone's life is really important because it informs you about what their day looks like as well as what their home looks like or what how who's in their lives or who do they turn to for support, and then also whatever's going on at work there. It's all related and you can really get a full scope of a person's life. So those are two different ways that integral coaching um, sees the person. And then something that's a big theme throughout many coaching um, methodologies is this idea that you're coaching the person and not the issue, right? So everyone has what they need within them to get through their issue. As far as I'm concerned, a coach's job is to help them see that within themselves.
yes, I agree. I mean, coaching seems to be taking on, various definitions. Some people coach and they're giving advice. Some people coach and they're mentoring. But in its purity, coaching is really about leading someone back to themselves, because the coach knows that the right answer, the best answer, is actually within the client and not within the coach. So
Yes, Mary.
So the answers for coaches often lie in the questions that they ask. So I mean, the answers for the client are usually in the questions that the coaches ask the client. Yeah. So then, tell me, in your practice as an integral coach, what are some challenges that clients face, or some trends that you see that clients face when they're undergoing life transitions?
Many clients come to me when they've been stuck in a pattern of indecision. So there's something, a longing for something different, whether it's a career or moving on from a relationship or becoming a parent. So many different things, even taking up exercise. So there's something they want, and yet they're not doing it. And there's a frustration that builds up. And then one day, boom, they've had enough and they're ready for a change. And I always love to know, what was that boom? What was the thing that suddenly shifted everything where you're reaching out for support? So it can be a job transition. It really, all types of transitions. I think, let's see, a theme would be, I think, because I'm in my 50s, and I have my own boom moments from my life. A lot of people are in their, well, also their 30s, but mostly their 40s, coming to me saying, I did all this for what? Or they say, I still haven't gotten this promotion. I've been working at this job and I'm fighting my way, up the ladder, and then I've hit a ceiling. What is this? Like, why have I done all this work if I have nothing more to show for it? Right. And that's a definite perspective that doesn't really even allow for other possibilities, right? If there's a fight going on, if there's a ceiling you're smashing up against, um, if the attitude is, I've done all this for what? So much, there are different ways to look at how your life is that, first of all, will feel better and also will support you in seeing what else is next. Like, instead of, I've done all this for what about, I'm look at all I've done, look at all the learning, and
Mhm.
and those things that haven't gone as well as I wanted. What can I learn from that so that I can step into something new, so that I can create a whole new today and tomorrow? Um, and that shift doesn't just happen like that, right? There's conversations. Some people might need to unpack something from their past. I try not to spend too much time on what's happened in the past and sort of move into the now as soon as possible and see that there's a world of possibility out there. And it doesn't always mean you have to quit your job and run somewhere else, right? It can just be a perspective shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I
And I
agree.
will, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, no, no, that's okay. I mean, like, it's in terms of it's a breakthrough, right? Like, what is it, that moment, what created that breakthrough, or what happened in the mind or in the emotions that actually, like they say, the straw that broke the camel's back, what is that thing? I think we're always, as coaches, looking for, like, what was that thing? But I also think that it's probably different for each person. In terms of, someone has had enough, or someone has, talked themselves out of a job, or whatever it may be. I mean, I think it's different. But I think, as coaches, I think we're super curious about how they got to where they are in their present moment. And, like, personally, as a mindset coach, it's also about, like, what's the thinking? And you were talking about the thinking, right? Like, is that all there is, or all this for what? And it's like we have tunnel vision. And I think I read somewhere on your website about blind spots. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes people have blind spots, where they just see what their perspective is. Can you talk a little bit about blind spots, and where, whether it's executives and leaders, or just, other people that you coach, where you experience that, what are those blind spots that people can have? And
Mm.
I think all of us have blind spots. It's the human condition.
Yeah, I think we all have blind
Yeah.
spots,
Yeah.
even us coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. Guilty.
And some examples are, I think right now I'm kind of thinking about these people who are having issues with coworkers or even their direct reports. Like, I'm not getting through to them. And how can I influence them? And all like there's a power struggle happening. Yet with for instance with the direct report, there is no power struggle. The direct report usually knows their manager is their manager. Um, there's something else going on, and maybe that direct report does want their manager's job, but really when that manager is in just engaged in the struggle, they're not stepping back, they're not slowing down, taking a step back and seeing this dynamic is not working, and it's on me as the leader to reshape our dynamic, whether
Yeah.
that's going right down to the beginning and reforming trust, talking about communication style, making specific requests, any complaint, like turning complaints into requests. Like if a manager is saying she just doesn't listen, she's not taking initiative, well, how have you set this up? What were the agreements you made together? And it's so hard to slow down, take some steps back and rebuild when you're just in it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I think we have, a specific narrative, right? Like we're assigning meaning to what's happening, but what we fail to recognize is that we're the only ones assigning that specific meaning because that other person has assigned a completely different meaning to the situation of what's happening. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and being clear on what's your story, what's the story you've made up. And when you start realizing there are facts and you're making a story out of it, you can also have more empathy for the person on the other side of that who's making up their own story, right? And something I want to say about that boom moment, which quite honestly, I'm not sure why I'm calling it that, but that's what just sort of came up for me. And my own blind spot, I think, when I was in my mid 40s, I had not found the man of my dreams. And I did find someone that I was dating. He was a mountain man, contractor, amazing Scrabble player, boyfriend
Okay.
who lived 300 miles away from me. And I had been doing a lot of back and forth to see him. He was not doing a lot of back and forth to come see me. But I was so, I don't know what I was thinking. There was some sort of blind spot. I was like, well, I'm just doing this. This is amazing. And it wasn't. And I woke up one morning at maybe 43,
Yeah.
and said, oh my God, this isn't the movie Sliding Doors. I don't have some other life happening somewhere else. This is it. Like,
Mhm.
if I want to have kids, I got to do this now. So I feel like my blind spot was my own mortality. Like, I just had no connection with the fact that this was my life and there were no other choices. Like, there were no other opportunities, I mean.
Yeah.
So I made a choice. I said, oh my God, I think I'm going to have kids on my own. I think I'm going to have a child on my own. And it took me a couple months to really work through it and go through a mourning period of not having the life that I thought I was going to. And I made this decision, and there were a lot of struggles. And 2 years later, almost now it's been 7 years, I had a baby girl on my own. And so that moment, that awakening for me, it was huge, right? And it was small. It was just waking up one morning and being like, I'm no longer okay with driving up to Tahoe every weekend to see some guy who has no real, there was really not, I mean, it was fun, but there was really nothing there. And it was like enough already, you know? Um, so I just thought I'd share that. So, and then a year later, after having my first daughter, I made the decision to have a second child on my own while I was creating. Well, then that's when I really, it was after my second child that I signed up for the certification program as a coach, because I felt like I had changed my life for the better in such a significant way, had such an aha moment that was really because I was allowing myself and giving myself the gift of slowing down. So I wanted to use that experience to help others in any kind of life transition they're going through.
Yeah. And also, like, I also find like coaches become coaches because they have gone through a journey of introspection and a journey of really discovering themselves and discovering who they are. And I think that that's a journey that never really ends, because as we get older, we keep evolving and we keep changing. So it's almost like we're constantly having to rediscover and meet ourselves over and over again. And I can definitely see how, having gone through that experience and that transition in your career, your relationship, and your family dynamic, having gone through all those transitions and then wanting to be someone who can be a guiding light for others in their transitions. So they always say that, we are most qualified to serve the person that we once
Oh,
were.
I've not heard that. I love that.
Um, like, because, we connect with ourselves and we connect with our past. And then when we want to become coaches, it's because we've assigned a meaning to that past that's empowering to us, right? Like, if had you had a really horrible transition and you've provided negative meanings to what happened and things happened to you, you were the victim, you'd never be a coach,
Mm,
because you'd never pull the positive out of that and say, hey, I can teach someone, or I can help someone, or I can guide someone through this, right? Because you went through a really, really dark period. But then when you see the light, part of that light is trying to understand how you can bring others through.
hmm Yeah. And I think, actually, I'm not, the dark period being when I was trying to have a child, or that morning of the family that I thought I was going to have. Yeah. And it also was, I was so sure of my decision that even if there was some sadness and mourning involved, there was this, it wasn't even fearless. Like, it was just a choice, and there was no other choice. Like,
Um,
this was happening.
yeah, yeah, I totally get it.
And like, it's sort of, and I think it was either Devin Bandison or Steve Chandler who said something about how, like, when somebody rescues somebody on the street or like pulls someone away from getting hit by a bus, and they say, oh my God, that, like, weren't you scared? And it's just like, fear isn't even, you're just doing what you were meant to do, or you're just being called to do it. And there's no time for fear. There's no, it's
Yeah.
almost instinct, and you're just driven by something other than, or something deep in your heart or in your spirit. And that's what it felt like. It didn't feel courageous. It didn't feel like I was taking something scary on. It was just what I had to do.
Mm. Well, it sounds like it was, just simply put, it was a choice, right? You
Hmm
made a choice and you followed through on that choice that you've made. It's taking me back to when we were at the experience, and Devin was trying to tell us about, the difference between a choice and a decision. And a decision is really to, I think it's to cut something away. Like, if you're deciding, it's you're cutting something off, right? I don't want this, so I want this. It's always like a decision that you're trying to make. But when it's a choice, it's a choice. You're not contemplating various options. That's the choice, because that's the choice, right?
hmm
Saving someone on the street from getting hit by a car, I'm not contemplating, do I save them? Do I not? You just do it because you made a choice to do it.
Definitely. Yeah. And that distinction, I think I was actually the subject of that distinction.
Yes, you were. You were. Was it the marker?
It was the chocolate and vanilla distinction
Yes, the chocolate and the vanilla.
or question. And I was very thankful that he said it. Yeah, that I was one of the fastest ones to get it.
Oh,
That's another kind of example of a blind spot, is that in the moment I was like, I have no idea what am I not getting?
Yeah, what am
Right.
I
And
not seeing?
I had to be coached through it
Yeah.
to remember
Oh,
about decision versus choice. Thank you for bringing that up.
yeah. No, that's great. So, I guess I want to talk about your coaching practice.
Mhm.
What was it like as you transitioned into being a different person in terms of being a coach and having your own practice and no longer being in the film industry? Like lots and lots of change, and now you're building. I guess you had a bit of experience of being a freelancer previously, so I guess
Yeah.
you know a little bit about what was involved in working for yourself. But I'm like curious about, what was it like in building your coaching practice and being able to, as you ramped up your clientele, being able to follow through, stay committed to what it is that you were doing, believing in yourself and your ability to succeed in the coaching space. What was that like for you and your transitions?
Yeah. Some mornings I wake up and I, for a moment, don't believe in myself. It's, I
Yeah.
think for everyone, it's a process. And when you're building your own business, it's up to you to get yourself inspired. You can't count on anyone else to get you motivated for the day. So whether it's a quiet cup of coffee on your own before everyone else gets up, or if it's, and again, I'm actually sharing with you things that have been shared from much wiser coaches than me. Watching an inspirational video or a song that gets you in the right mood, or um, recommitting to yourself how you want to live your life, and that being your motivation for sitting down and doing the work. Um, there has to be a level of commitment, and that you want to do this for you. If you're
Yeah.
doing it, but I mean, we all have mortgages or rents. So of course, there's financial challenges, but that can't be the underlying reason why you want to start a business. It has to be something that's fulfilling for you and that you believe in, and that's for you. There are, of course, like I want my children to be proud of me, but it's really coming back to me. So there's a lot of vulnerability involved, like reaching out to people. And I find the more personalized I can make, like, why I do what I do and why I might be of service to them, personal about me, personal about them, the easier and more natural the conversations are, and the more likely it is that I'll be able to serve them. So I built my business one person at a time. And again, it's really up to people who are business owners to create their own inspiration and motivation. Um, you could be inspired by someone else, but you have to pull that in for yourself,
Mhm.
and commit to it. Because there are days where I'd rather be watching, binge watching something or other, The Great or whatever it is that I'm watching. And I continue with my business because I actually love what I do.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also experiment with things. I don't really, sure, I could fail at something, but I treat it as an experiment. So I've done some group coaching with people and one-on-one. I'm currently running a group called Communication Up Level for Leaders. It's a women's group, a 3-month group. It's been fantastic.
Mhm.
We'll be finishing up after US Thanksgiving. And then I'm starting an expanded version in February where we're talking about increasing impact at work, how to be seen by the C-suite if you're not the C-suite, how to communicate with all levels in your company,
Mhm.
uh, how to have just, yeah, impact. Really, people want to know, how can I make more impactful communications? How can I inspire others? How can I inspire decision making? How do I go to a meeting and not walk away feeling like nothing was accomplished?
Right. Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about obviously communication, since it's called Communication Up Level. I'm really excited for that, for completing this group and also the February group.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is so cool. So you do both group coaching and you do the one-on-one coaching. Do you have a
Yes.
preference, or do you sort of like them both in different ways?
I like them both in different ways. There's really a richness and that slowing down and going deep with a one-on-one coach and really watching them take on whatever project it is they want to work on for the length of time that we're together. Um, and then I love the dynamic of a group coaching scenario where people are inspiring one another, people are supporting one another, people can see they're not alone in whatever it is that their challenge is, what they're struggling with. And then I bring in new ideas and we discuss them, and of course do some spot coaching along the way. With my groups, I also usually offer 1 or 2 coaching sessions so that they on their own can be focusing well on what they want and then bring that into the group. So I
Oh,
love them both, very different.
and actually, it's a great idea to kind of offer both within that so that they can get some of that one-on-one time to get more clarity on what it is that they are wanting to walk away with from those types of things. I guess I'm wondering, like, how important is intention when going into a coaching, like a coaching relationship, one-on-one or group coaching? How important is the power of having the right intentions and knowing your intention going into something?
Can you tell me a little bit more about your question so that
Uh,
I
yeah. So, I mean, sometimes you'll see like a lot of people taking coaching programs and masterminds and courses, and they're loving it because they're probably people who really love learning or they're really into personal development. But one thing that I've noticed, also within myself, was that like sometimes I was not so clear on like what is the intention here? Like, why am I taking this course? What am I hoping to get out of it? And how am I going to apply it? And I'm curious, in terms of your, say, your group coaching program, is intention part of that, or talking about intention, or, what are the intentions of taking the program? What are we hoping to get out of this? Is that
Yeah.
yeah, is that discussed? Because I like some of the programs I've been in, it's never been really discussed in terms of like, and then it kind of leaves things sort of open where, you go, you get value, but then you don't really know how that value how you can actually utilize or apply that value to better your own life or better your career or relationships, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I've shared that experience. It's especially in a group, it's so filled with energy, and
Yeah.
you get involved, and you're really passionate about what you're learning and excited, and then the program's over, and then
Mm.
you're like, "Wait a second, where's the person I was when I was in that group?" Right? So something I've done is when people have enrolled in my groups, I send them a questionnaire and I ask them and give them time to reflect on where are some of their challenges and also what is their intention? What do they want to get out of being a part of this group? So they have it in writing. And then actually in our upcoming session, we're going to be reflecting back on that and see how things have transpired over these past almost, well, 2 months. And then we'll have another session at the very end of November. And they have that time period to reflect on that. And really I think it comes back to, again, being inspired and beyond the intention, so that's giving yourself the inspiration, that feeling when you're outside of the group also, because it's really on us to do. We can't rely on others to fill us up with joy and excitement and
Yeah.
that aliveness.
Yeah.
And it feels hard until you get used to doing it. It's like any other practice. It's like, how do I energize? How do I keep myself enlivened?
Yeah.
Um, But there's also a moment when an intention can be turned into a commitment. Are
Mhm.
you, and I think that's also something that came up in the game changer experience. Like, what are you committed to starting now? And it's a really provocative question that's worth asking yourself every day to recommit. Am I willing to recommit to this? If no, then fine. Don't beat yourself up, just move on. But if your intention is to recommit every day to the life you want to live, it's really empowering. In
Oh,
in this group right now, in the last month, I've challenged the members to take on a project, no matter how small. And I've taken one on as well, which is to not have any um, devices in my bedroom at night. It's just a tiny little thing, but I'm committed to it because I want more rest and peace in my life. And that's one way I'm doing it is I am keeping my Apple Watch for the alarm, but everything else is out of the room
yeah.
as an experiment. But I'm committing to it, and it's something to play with to see what can I take on and accomplish.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think it's important to turn your intention into a commitment because we all have the best of intentions, right? Like, well, we have an intention and then we don't do it. And then, we feel bad about it. And it's like a vicious circle. But it's like if you can tie a commitment to that intention, it means it's something that you're going to actually do. And hopefully it's something that you're also able to kind of assess afterwards on whether or not it was done. So it holds you more accountable to your commitment. But that also speaks to your intention. I don't know if you've ever heard of something called the intention intervention gap, but
No.
I had read this book by an author called Nick Peterson. He wrote a book called Bumpers, and it
Mm.
really what is a book that very, very small, like 90-page book, but it really helps people understand how to get closer to what it is that they actually want in life. And in that book, he has this thing that's called the intention intervention gap. So it's like looking at your intentions. Well, I intend to eat well. I intend to go to the gym 3 times a week. I intend to do this. Okay. And then look at your intervention. Intervention is your behavior. So you said you were going to go to the gym 3 times a week, but you actually went once. So the gap is 2, right? And it's like the gap will really tell you the delta between where you are now and where you actually want to be. So where you are now is your current behaviors. Where you want to be are like the intentions that you set out. And what's going to keep you from where you want to go is basically behaviors. And
Mm.
it's all about like how do you modify your behaviors so that your intentions match your actions. So it's like having the intentions match the commitments. When your intentions match your commitments, there's no gap because you actually did what you said you were going to do.
That's great.
Yeah. So sometimes it's nice to see like different concepts played out somewhere. And I'm like, oh, that's great for coaching. We're
Mhm.
always trying to get people closer to what it is that they want.
Yeah, I think also when you set up an intention and if you turn it into a commitment, like I'm going to work out 3 days a week,
Yeah.
it to treat it like an experiment and
Mm.
like run it for 2 weeks, right? If you're not going 3 days a week, like what's going to feel better in the long run? Is beating yourself up going to change how you perform? Not likely, not for any lasting amount of time. So you can also say, I'm going to work out 1 day a week. So you can start hitting your goals and congratulating yourself and then move on. It's like going from, they have these apps that I've used called Couch to 10K, right? They don't from couch to 10K. Well, they don't have you out there running a 10K day one. They have you running and walking for like a minute each
Yeah.
so that you come back the next day because it felt good and you did what they told you to do and you accomplished it, right? Like baby steps, small steps are okay.
They're
And if you
almost necessary.
Exactly,
Yeah.
they're necessary. If
Yeah.
you and people get impatient, right? We all do.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. And we also have the best of intentions. Like, but I want to get in shape. I want to do this. I want to go 5 times a week or 3 times a week. Like, yes, we know you want to, but our mind is programmed so differently, right? Like that's just too much for the brain to be like, okay, no, we're not doing this. So it's like if we're able to rewire ourselves to just give ourselves those small wins, once we get that small win, we start building the momentum, right? And once the momentum starts building, we get more committed and we get recommitted, and then we get addicted to our progress. Like, okay, I did this today. How much more am I going to do tomorrow? But it's like what I've noticed with like my clients is like, okay, but it's like, how do we get there slowly, right? And start using that as like building blocks, getting closer and closer to what it is that we actually want without jolting our system, of like doing everything right away from the beginning, wanting it to be perfect. And it's like, well, that's
Yes.
that's a non-start. That tends to always be a non-start for people.
It is fascinating. I mean, myself, my clients, like there's always this desire to like giving yourself a small accomplishment feels like you're being a wuss, like you're
Mhm.
not being your best self if you can't just do it immediately. And I still, as much as I try to read about it, I don't know where that specific thing comes from, because who wakes up and can do anything right away? But we so many people have that, like, well, I don't want to run for a minute, walk a minute. I'll just run 3 miles. It'll be fine. Like, sure you will. And maybe you'll do it twice and then you will not do it again.
Yeah, and yeah, and that's more of the guarantee, right? Where we know if we're setting our standard and we're putting the bar so high, it's like another thing in that book, that the bunkers book, is like your maximum achievable does not translate to your maximum attainable. So just because you got there once or twice doesn't mean that you can consistently achieve those goals or achieve those benchmarks that you're setting for yourself. So it's like, how do we actually just raise the floor so that we're doing better and better each day, rather than trying to figure out like what's our ceiling and how can we reach the ceiling and exceed the ceiling and keep getting better and better. Because the most that we can do may not always be something that we can do consistently. Consistency will always trump the ability to always beat our own records. So if we can be consistent, and over time we will actually do a lot.
Yeah, and Mary, that's got me thinking about the question you posed about being inspired by a group or a course.
Yeah.
So if we can make a small commitment, right? Because that's not sustainable. And most of us don't have time to be in a group for the rest of our lives to inspire us to create a difference in our lives. So maybe if there's a small action that we can take that's attainable, that we know we can continue once the course is over. So we can always look back and say, when did I
Well, Diana, you are frozen on my end. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I'll wait another 30 seconds to see if you come back. Hi.
Hi.
It froze, and then I guess it kicked you out for some reason.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yep. You're back.
apologies if it was my technology.
Oh,
I think where I may have gotten cut off was talking about taking small action steps
yeah.
in one of those courses, and that maybe then we can look back at that course and say, I started X experiment while in that course and I'm still doing it. And I've built upon it since then.
That's so good. That's so good. And really, at the end of the day, we can take all the knowledge in, but if we're not applying the knowledge, then what's the point of taking it all in if we're not going to do anything with it? Well, Dan,
Exactly.
I love this conversation. I really had a great time chatting with you. I'm glad that I met you at this experience. I think that, People tend like we tend to attract people that are like us or people that are walking, in our similar paths or aligned with our paths. So I'm very, very happy that I got the opportunity to spend a little bit of one-on-one time with you today. Now, for our viewers who want to know more about integral coaching and you as a coach, where could they go to find more information about you and what you do?
They can go to shorecliffcoaching.com or dianatauder.com, and it'll send you over to Shorecliff. And I'll make sure to give you the information on how to contact me, and we can have it with this interview. And yeah, or you can go to Diana at shorecliffcoaching.com.
Okay, perfect. And I'll make sure to link it all up in the description below as well. Well,
Great. Mary,
Diana,
thank you
oh,
so much for doing this with me. And it was such a pleasure. Yeah, talking to you and getting to know you better.
likewise, the feeling is mutual then. Thank you so much. Okay, hope to talk to you soon. Take care.
Sounds good.